Hey everyone, Howard Gearhauser here. On the line, you also have my dad, Dr. G. In today's episode, we are going to talk about exercise. Exercise obviously has a lot of different opinions, a lot of different tactics and strategies. So, how can you figure out what exercise program makes sense for you? What things should you be including? Should you even be exercising? In a lot of cases with our health coaching clients, we find that they're exercising too much for their health condition. Maybe they're really low energy and they're doing, boot camps and exercise that's a little too intense for where they're at from an energy standpoint. So we want to dive into this to figure out how much should you be exercising, when's it appropriate to increase your intensity, and what are all the different components of exercise that you should be incorporating into your routine. So Dad, can you just share a little bit about your philosophy on exercise and what you're currently doing in terms of your exercise program?
Okay, well, I'm not going to go into my whole story, but basically, I was over exercising, as Howard mentioned. A lot of people tend to over exercise for their health condition. I was into competitive sports, so it's easy to over exercise, and we see that all the time. The competitive athlete that develops chronic fatigue or has a heart attack, we see that all the time, and basically that's what happened to me, both of those. And so I had to rethink. I was from the age of, fit or fat mentality, where we ate lots of carbohydrates so that we had the glycogen to just exercise, and thought that was the holy grail. Now, I had an intuitive sense at the time that being a competitive athlete, I had an intuitive sense that this is not lengthening my life. It's like smoking cigarettes. This is probably going to shorten your life. Well, I felt that way intuitively about exercise, but I didn't face up to it until I collapsed. So I think exercise is something that a lot of us overdo. And one of the things about exercise is when we exercise, we stimulate our sympathetic nervous system. It's like snorting cocaine. So when you snort cocaine, your energy goes up and you feel better. Okay, so we use exercise in that fashion where we feel like hell, but we know if we force ourselves to exercise, we'll get this high that will feel better for a few minutes. So you're like an addict where you get the high, feel better for a few minutes, but you have harmed your body. All of your systems have taken a hit.
So what's that fine line? Because exercise obviously has its health benefits, but if you overdo it, just like anything, it could become problematic. So what's that line? Where do we have that boundary of healthy versus unhealthy?
Yeah, and that boundary, unfortunately, is individualized. So there's no way to predict it. So most of us just have to go by how we feel. And so I would say if you're having problems with chronic fatigue, or you're having problems with, say, injuries, overuse injuries over and over, or you have a medical condition, then those are hints that I would err on the side of too little exercise versus too much. So you kind of just have to listen to your body. And most of us don't, because we are brainwashed to think that, every day I see ads of people on the exercise machines or doing a boxing class or whatever, where they're pushing themselves to the limit. That's our culture. Push yourself to the limit. It's always good. And I can tell you for sure, 37 years of practicing medicine, it isn't always good.
So let's say you're one of those people who's suffering from the chronic fatigue or the, complex disease, or you're someone who's had, knee replacements and hip replacements. What do you do? Like, how do you still stay lucid? How do you still stay flexible? Obviously, just sitting around doesn't seem like the answer either.
Yeah, so our clients that have, problems where we think it's probably not a good idea to exercise, and that can be, like you said, chronic fatigue or some disease, then, it's almost always good. The research backs us up, and just from a common sense perspective, it's almost always good to walk. It's almost always good to do something that keeps your flexibility, because if you don't, get into the positions of a human being going through, say, a hunter-gatherer lifestyle of bending forward, squatting, bending backward, pulling themselves up. If you don't go through these basic motions, you will tend to lose that motion. And we know that from research, that if you sit in a chair all day, your hip flexors tighten up and your hamstrings tighten up. And so you don't have the full range of motion if you're not doing something to put those muscles and tendons and ligaments through the full range of motion that joint was designed to be in. So you need to have some kind of protocol that takes you through kind of a series of those. And one good way to do that is something like yoga. So yoga is where you get in poses that, if you do all the basic poses, that gets most of the major joints and ligaments. The benefit of yoga is that they've done studies where they have people just do stretching versus doing the postures in yoga. And the people that do the postures in yoga have the added benefit of treating their depression, whereas the people who stretch, their depression doesn't improve. So there's something about the poses in yoga which have been around since ancient times. We have to listen to the ancient wisdom. And so here are something that is relatively safe. I mean, you could hurt yourself getting into a yoga pose. So obviously you don't want to do anything too aggressive in the beginning.
Yeah, and the other thing about yoga, it's great for the flexibility, and the different poses do help with the range of motion and keeping your body functioning. But you're also clearing energy blocks. So you can actually improve your energy through yoga. And when your energy gets improved, now you have a surplus of energy to actually go do more exercise. So our approach is really energy focused. We need to get your energy level up before you increase your intensity with your workouts. So what are some of the things that we could be doing aside from yoga to get that baseline energy up? That way we can go do, some of the other exercises that we like that maybe we're not able to do because of injury or disease or chronic fatigue.
Yeah, so here I would probably recommend referring you to our top 10 hacks that we recommend for our clients. So if you do those, that will put you in a good position. And, that's the fixing your circadian rhythm and working with your diet and working with clearing deuterium out of your mitochondria. And that's a whole long, complicated story that we're not going to talk about now. So these things are what you do. And then as you feel that, that built up energy, like I want to chase somebody down, you just get that feeling that I really excited, happy, want to move. I want to sprint. That's what we get our clients gradually up to. We say, yeah, then go for it. Go for the high intensity sprinting. That's good for you. The high intensity sprinting is good for your strength, your balance, your flexibility. High intensity sprinting is great, but it can be a problem if you don't have the flexibility in your joints. You go sprinting and you tear something, you have to have a surgery. It just sets you back so much, or you drain that life force out of you, and then your disease progresses. And so we see that in diseases like multiple sclerosis or even cancer. Yes, mild stuff like we're talking about, the walking, the yoga, that's great for those diseases. But to do like a marathon or some extreme activity like that, when you have those diseases, you don't want to do that until you're just, everything's going really well and you're chomping at the bit to, yes, I want to do this from a positive perspective instead of, oh my God, I got to burn that chocolate cake I ate last night. I got to get on the treadmill. I got to put it at 7 degrees and I got to go and I got to build a pile of sweat on the floor. And then I'll have paid my pittance to that chocolate cake. That's a wrong, absolute wrong way to do it, to think how much you eat has any connection to how much you should exercise.
And that's a really good point. I think it's also this attitude and the emotional state we're in when we're exercising. If we're doing it because, hey, I love to be in nature, I love to challenge myself, I love to hike up the mountain, and it's such a positive thing, that's great. But if it's like I'm doing this so I can pig out or drink alcohol or whatever the reason might be, you're doing it from a place of fear, almost fear of not liking the way you look. Is typically the reason why people exercise. I don't want to get too out of shape. But if you start doing things that you love that are active, we find that you don't drain so much energy, and you're much happier and love yourself a lot more when you come from that place, not exercising like my dad mentioned, to burn off the chocolate cake. You exercise because you just love to go do things that are active and do stuff outside, right? That's a big one that we always talk about. What's the benefit of doing it outside versus the gym?
Okay, well, we talk ad nauseum about getting the sunlight, and I am demonstrating for that for you. I work outdoors as much as I can because humans are indoor animals now, and we're not meant to be. And that's like shooting yourself in the foot. That's like putting a tarp over your orange tree and expecting it to bear oranges. No, it's going to wither. The leaves are going to turn yellow and it's going to die if you cover it. We are the same as an orange tree. We have photosynthetic chemicals in us, just like an orange tree, that maybe are just as important for our health. Certainly, they're a huge factor in our health. So if we get outside in the sun, which stimulates a direct electric current within our body, which is part of our energy system, our water absorbs frequencies of the sun and builds a battery that helps our little engines inside our cells make energy. So it just makes sense that if you want to do it nature's way, you need to be in the sun, or at least be in the sun for as much of your exercise as you possibly can, because that is how we are designed to operate. And grounded is the other factor that goes along with that. If you can be grounded for part of your exercise, do some sprints on a grassy field barefoot or something like that, that's the ideal. Or swim in a river. When you're swimming in a river, you're grounded, you're getting electrons from the surface of the earth up into your body. Electrons are what electric flow is. It's a flow of electrons. We have flows of electrons inside our body that make our energy.
And to touch on the grounding and going barefoot, if you're someone who is low energy and wants to really take advantage of walking, if you walk barefoot, you are going to work all sorts of different muscles in your body than if you're walking with shoes on. We've mentioned this before in our grounding video, but it's like reflexology. You're hitting all these different points on the bottom of your foot, which is, stimulating different muscles to work. When we were in Costa Rica, we were walking on these sharp rocks, like on the beach, and it was amazing how many different muscles you were working in your legs, and the way you walk starts to change, because when you're stepping on something sharp, you need to be walking really light on your feet. So if you're someone who can't go sprint right away, just try walking barefoot, and you'll be really surprised with how good you feel after doing that. And eventually you can get to the point where my dad is, where he can step on thorns of cacti and it doesn't even hurt him. You don't need to start there. Just go walk barefoot on grass to start. Do something that feels good to you. You don't need to go too extreme right away, but that's a really cool thing that we like to do, that's not too taxing energy wise. So is there anything else you want to add in terms of exercise and just kind of the thought process behind it?
Okay, well, the research on exercise shows that moderate and even healthy exercise seems to, on an epidemiologic view, that's where they study populations, is helpful. And those studies don't pick out the overexercise. But I would say overall in our population, way more people underexercise than overexercise. And I know we've kind of emphasized the overexercising because that's what I was, and it all, came that close to killing me. But thinking about the barefoot walking, if you walk barefoot, say on a trail, it's almost the exertion of running, and you don't have to run. You're just walking slowly, but you exert yourself more. Like Howard said, you stimulate so many different things. Then if you look at reflexology, all of our organs and our brain and our liver and our kidneys are all mapped out in the bottom of our foot in reflexology. So when you get that stimulus to the bottom of our foot, and our bottom of our foot is extremely populated with nerve endings, like way more than any other part of our body except our fingertips. So we're designed, it looks like, to get this reflexology treatment on a regular basis. And one of our modern environmental things is we've thrown out going barefoot. Everybody wears the sports shoes, the running shoes, or other rubber non-conducting shoes that a lot of times lift the heel, which is unnatural. You should get level shoes if you have to wear shoes. Keep that Achilles tendon and the calf muscle stretched out, because it's when it starts to shorten, then you get the foot deformities that are so common in our culture.
So just to recap, don't over-exercise if you're low energy or have a disease. It's better to rest, honestly, at that point. That way you have enough energy for your body to operate. If you're going to exercise, do it outside and practice functional movements, things that make sense. If you're doing stuff in a gym just to burn calories, from our standpoint, that's not the right mindset you want to have about exercise. Go do something out in nature so you can get a lot of the health benefits of being out in nature. Try going barefoot, even if it's just walking to start on any surface, grass, sand, a trail. You will get a great workout just from walking slowly barefoot, especially if it's a rough surface and you're inching along. That's going to be a great workout. So if you're low energy, start there. It's a great one. And then doing other things like getting in water, swimming is great, especially if it's outdoors. Getting in that water. If that water is cold, you get the benefit of our cold adaptation, which we have a whole video on that too. So the sun exposure, the cold adaptation, the going barefoot, the getting connected with nature, if you can incorporate that into your exercise routine, you'll have all the more benefit from doing it that way. Anything else you want to add before we sign off?
No, I think that's great advice. You're killing many birds with one stone. And in our busy world, we're all too busy. If we can do that and it makes us feel better, that's great.
Cool. So if you have any other advice about exercises you're doing that might be valuable for our audience, share them in the comments below, and be sure to go check out all those other videos that we mentioned. If you just go to our channel page, if you're on YouTube, or our fan page on Facebook, we have all of them there. Go binge watch those. It's our best stuff for free. So we appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you on the next episode. Thanks.